one more short story. Hello, and thank you for joining us again on One More Short Story with me, Chris Fulwell. We've got a great episode today. Today's focus is on comedy stories. Now, in writing battle, if you're someone that's taking part at the moment, you'll know about the class system, and if you pick the bard, you'll be naturally directed towards more comedic leaning stories. There are writers out there who like being told straight off the bat, okay, you're in this category now, write something funny, and that's their bread and butter. And interestingly, what's come out of some of these class discussions is some people really don't like being told to be funny. They like when the genres just land however they land, and in a genre which may not be obvious in terms of its potential for comedy, just twisting it on its head and doing that. But these stories were all intended to be funny, and in my obviously unbiased opinion, I think they are, and I think you're going to enjoy them. As ever, there are, despite them being comedic, if you want to go and check out the links in terms of content warnings, you're very welcome to do so. If that's helpful to you, I will put the links to the stories in the episode description, so you can just go to the Writing Battle site and have a look there. First up today, we've got a Space Farce story from David Roe. This is called Captain Asteroid and the Ashes of Diplomacy. From the Space Farce genre from the first battle of 2026, David's prompts were Space Farce, Politician and Urn, and I've greatly enjoyed how his brain has responded to these prompts. I really think you're going to enjoy it as well. It's narrated and all the sound effects and things organised by Sam James, so thank you, Sam. I'm grateful to you for doing that, and I'm going to step back and let's go. This is Captain Asteroid and the Ashes of Diplomacy by David Roe, read by Sam James.
The red plastic disc pirouetted across the tattered board, its journey aided by the poorly calibrated gravitron matrix. "King me!" Captain Asteroid declared. Betasub 3000 emitted a low-pitched hum, its approximation of a sigh.
"You only win because you refuse to update my checkers firmware."
"Don't be a sore loser," Asteroid said. "You're playing against a hero of the Shmorpian War. I'm a renowned strategist." Betasub's next move exposed it to a triple jump.
"If you're such a hero, why are you assigned to this rickety old shit bucket with a malfunctioning droid?"
Asteroid grunted. "Remind me to adjust your SAS subroutines. If you must know, it's because I made a terrible mistake at the Battle of Planet Cock." Lights blinked across Betasub's cast iron head. It said,
"I find no record of that battle."
"That's because it never happened. I'd chased the Shmorpian fleet across the galaxy and finally had them trapped. They were between Cork and a hard place." Asteroid's gaze drifted to the field of stars that lay beyond the viewport. "I can still see it, Betasub. The sunlight glinting off Cork's ring. Victory was close. I just had to reach out and grab it."
"What happened?"
Asteroid placed his head in his hands. "Nerves. I fumbled around, perfecting my plan of attack, and they escaped. The brass never forgave me for letting Cork slip through my fingers." Betasub placed a rusty hand on his shoulder.
"You tried your best."
"No," Asteroid said, breaking free. I was past my prime. I'd gone soft. He leapt out of his chair and began pacing the bridge, worn deck plates groaning underfoot. Anyway, war's over now. Peace in the galaxy and all that. A series of beeps punctuated the captain's speech. He rushed to the communications terminal. Go for Asteroid! Asteroid! A voice cried, dripping with contempt. Figured you'd be the only officer within 28 light years of this backwater. Admiral Starblight, Asteroid groaned. How could I help? Starblight sighed. There's a Shmorpian politician in your sector named Glibglob. She's on a galactic pilgrimage, toting around the remains of some martyr to a bunch of their holy sites. It's just religious pandering, if you ask me, but that's not my business. Anyway, I need you to pick her up and take her home. Why can't the Shmorpians do it? Their ship hit a comet. Asteroid laughed. A comet? In this day and age? Apparently, the lookout forgot their binoculars, Starblight said. Plus, it was pitch black out there. Well, it's space, sir. Nevertheless, Starblight harumphed, the ink on the armistice is not yet dry, so this mission is critical to improving human-Shmorpian relations. Don't screw it up. You can count on me, sir. Not bloody likely, Starblight muttered before the line died. The airlock doors hissed open to reveal an 8-foot-tall Shmorpian swathed in royal blue robes. The alien looked down her long purple beak at Asteroid with a disdainful gaze that prompted him to stand an inch taller and thrust out his chest. Welcome aboard the Junker, Senator Glibglob, he said, extending his hand. Glibglob shifted a golden orb to the crook of one arm and reluctantly shook his hand.
Captain Asteroid, I presume?
Asteroid summoned his haughtiest chuckle. Actually, it's pronounced Asteroid. It's French Huguenot originally. Glibglob withdrew her hand.
I don't know what that is.
Right, let me show you around. Glibglob followed Asteroid down the dimly lit passageway, her avian eyes scanning the loose panels and leaking coolant. Asteroid sensed the unspoken judgment, and his lip curled in a sneer. So that must be the dead guy, he asked, pointing at the golden orb. Glibglob bristled.
These are the sacred remains of Shmorpkin's most treasured saint. He sacrificed himself to save my people.
So, kind of like Space Jesus.
I don't understand your references,
Glibglob said. Never mind. Asteroid forced open the jam's door to the bridge and ushered Glibglob inside. Allow me to introduce my helmsman, Betasub. Betasub swiveled around in its chair and waved, its forearm creaking precariously upon a corroded elbow.
Greetings, Senator. 404 error, name not found.
Glibglob raised the urn to her beak and whispered.
Please protect me.
Asteroid shut his eyes and pinched the bridge of his nose. Enough chit-chat. Betasub, set a course for Gormulon 5. Betasub offered a clinking salute and tapped on its console. Concerningly, instead of the grind of the jump drive rattling his bones, Asteroid felt his feet lift off the deck. Good Lord, you've deactivated the gravitron matrix, Asteroid said. Betasub floated from its seat.
I keep telling you, my firmware needs an upgrade.
The sudden loss of gravity sent Glibglob drifting, her lanky frame tilting off-kilter. The golden urn slipped from her grasp, struck the bulkhead, and exploded into a cloud of grey dust.
"Water!"
she cried. Asteroid steadied himself against the command console. "I'll re-engage gravity! Betasub, secure the ashes!"
Aye, Captain.
Betasub activated its mouth-based vacuum and glided across the bridge as the dust plumed in zero-G. Sparks erupted as the ashes settled on sensitive circuitry, but Betasub was able to hoover most of the martyr's remains. Asteroid's fingers danced across the console. "Just about there!" Gravity re-engaged, and everyone landed on the deck with a thud. Glibglob scrambled to her feet.
"Tell me you have him?"
Betasub nodded.
The ashes are safely inside my detritus receptacle.
Asteroid grabbed a garbage bin and approached Betasub. He held the bin beneath the robot's undercarriage and opened the latch, but the compartment was empty. "Nothing's there!"
It appears to be stuck.
Betasub said.
A little compressed air should release it.
A trumpet-like explosion erupted from Betasub's posterior, and the dust shot into the bin. Asteroid sheepishly handed it to Glibglob, ashes still billowing over its rim. "You know, I think it would behoove us to never speak of this again." Glibglob seized the bin, the fury in her eyes melting into resignation.
"Yes,
She said at last.
I don't believe I'll mention this incident in my report."
I don't know that I've ever come across a story where a robot has farted space dust in negotiations of interplanetary, intergalactic, diplomatic situation. I'm not sure I've ever said those words together in that order. But very funny stuff from David there. Very, very funny indeed. He got a lot of appreciation, a lot of love for that in the debrief section of Writing Battle. It's no secret that I think debrief's one of the best features of that competition, where you can just go wild and read loads of stories and leave loads of comments, and hopefully have the same reciprocated for your own stories if you've entered that competition. This was in the Pro Judge competition, and it's one of these in the early stages of the judging, where as soon as you hit 3 losses, you're out, you're eliminated. And David went 2 wins and 3 losses, and then sadly didn't progress any further. A crying shame, if you ask me. But I think David should be very pleased with this story. He's written some other robot-based comedy in the past for other competitions. Follow him on Instagram and ask him about the robot propeller. I shall say no more for fear of legal action from across the pond in Canada. Our next story today is by me. Now, I have intentionally not been including my stories so far, not because I'm shy or anything of that nature. I didn't want this podcast to become, here's my stories with my chat and my reflection and my narration, and I want variety. I don't want it all about me. But, a few people have said to me, it would be good to have my stories on here to show that I'm prepared to be vulnerable, to show what I've written. Like every writer on Writing Battle, I've had some stories that have done better than others, and I thought, no, fair enough, now is the time. This story is called A Saw Point, that's SAW, and it's from the first peer judge battle this year. The prompts I landed on for this were workplace comedy, lumberjack, and first aid kit. So naturally, my brain went the absurd comedy route. We'll talk more afterwards. This story is read wonderfully by Taurenelle, who is a writer and an actor and a fantastic narrator. So I think you're going to enjoy this. So thank you very much, Taurenelle. Let's go. Let's hear A Sore Point by me, Chris Fulwell, narrated by Taurenelle.
Bucky Johansson stood 6'4" and weighed 260 pounds. Truth be told, he was closer to 263 pounds before an eye-watering visit to the bathroom each and every morning. If toilets could talk, Bucky's would beg for death. Bucky had a wild, bushy beard and biceps the size of a toddler's head. He was also the most loud-mouthed, irritating pain in the ass in the state of Wisconsin. And that was according to his friends. The lumberjack's life suited Bucky. Fresh air, honest work, and, as had been said to many a weary waitress and bored bartender, making Mother Nature his bitch. Life was good. On the morning that this state of affairs changed, Bucky was deep in the forest, sizing up the biggest sugar maple he could find. The tree was 90 feet high, and he could barely stretch his arms halfway around it. But Lucky licked his lips and spat in the snow, grinning like a schoolboy at the beach in bikini season. Gloves? Check. Chainsaw? Hell yeah, check. The still MS-881, a big beast of a saw, dangled from his belt. He had named it Winifred after his dear departed grandma. His mom had wept buckets when he told her. He would never understand women. Goggles? Nope. Bucky just closed his eyes when needed. He wasn't afraid of wood. Wood was afraid of him. Helmet? Nope. Helmets are for pussies. First aid kit? Meh, probably one in his pocket. Ear protection? Well now, the buzzing of the saw hurt Bucky's ears, and safety was important. Kind of. Check. Bucky scratched the crack of his ass and sniffed his hands. He cranked Winifred into action, then craned his neck and yelled up at a tree over the deep rumbling of the saw. Oh yeah, no hard feelings, sweetheart. He got an inch or two into the bark before an immense explosive pressure caught him square in the ribs. He was flying. Oh, flying? What the f... He wasn't flying. He was being lifted. Huge, thick branches of sugar maple had wrapped around his chest like a goddamn hand, and were lifting him higher and higher into the winter air. The rougher parts of the branch dug into the softer parts of him. He didn't enjoy it. Then he stopped moving and realized what he was dealing with. Oh shit. The tree had a face. A real, moving face, eyes, eyebrows, nose, mouth, the whole shebang. Bucky was real close to it. From the looks of things, it was mighty pissed off.
Would you mind explaining what the hell that was about?
A series of vowels squeaked out of Bucky's flapping mouth. Words were impossible.
Oh, right. Hang on.
He couldn't help but notice that the tree's voice kind of reminded him of Alan Rickman. Bucky had watched Die Hard every Christmas since he was 14. The branches relaxed a little, and Bucky's lungs sucked in sweet forest air. The tree stared him down, one gnarled eyebrow raised in wooden expectation. What the fuck? Bucky Johansson, the biggest, strongest lumberjack in a 100-mile radius, was in the grasp of a goddamn tree. And it was talking to him. Was he dreaming? No. His dreams didn't hurt, and he didn't have much of an imagination, even in his sleep. In any case, the tree wasn't going anywhere. Neither was Bucky. He decided to talk. Beg your pardon, Mr. Tree, but...
Ernesto.
Bucky swallowed hard. Winifred lay pinned against his leg, cold and useless. Oh gosh, what'd you say, what'd you say there?
My name is Ernesto, and I'll thank you to explain why you just took a chunk out of me, if you don't mind.
Oh yeah, so see, it's sort of my job, you know. The tree, Ernesto, pulled Bucky closer.
Your job? It's your job to go around hacking chunks out of innocent deciduous trees minding their own business,
said Ernesto, now sounding disturbingly like Alan Rickman, albeit much louder. and a tree. Sorry? Ernesto rolled its eyes.
Look, you idiot. What are you going to do about the bloody great hole you just carved into me?
Sweat poured down Bucky's temples and into his beard, despite the cold. Oh, for sure, I have a first aid kit. Plasters, bandages, and whatnot. It ain't much there, but I could try. The absurdity of this suggestion lingered in the air between them like a fart at a funeral. Neither man nor tree spoke. Ernesto broke the deadlock.
I have a better idea. You come up with something better, or I splatter you on a rock like a fat, hairy mosquito. No hard feelings, sweetheart. Your choice.
Bucky whimpered. He hadn't whimpered since math class in junior high. Somewhere in the back of his mind, the part that wasn't atrophied by beer and by never having had an original thought in his life, salvation fired a flare. Oh! TPO! The tree's lip curled. Bucky plowed on. Oh, what about a TPO, Mr. Ernesto, sir?
What exactly is a TPO?
Oh, geez, Louise. It even pauses just like him. Bucky almost wished his mom were here. Professor Snape was her favorite. No, yeah, it's a tree preservation order. Means nobody can cut that tree down. We'd all leave you alone. Ernesto narrowed its eyes. Bucky had never heard a tree tut. In different circumstances it would have been funny. These were not different circumstances.
And with this TPO thing, am I to be left alone? By all of you?
Bucky nodded, eyes red and wide. Oh, you betcha! Sweat trickled down his back and pooled in his boxers, turning his ass into a frosty swamp. With an almighty sigh, Ernesto returned Bucky to the ground.
Very well, little man. You can bugger off now.
Bucky Johansen did, indeed, bugger off. As he limped out of the forest, he decided two things. One, it was time to leave lumberjacking behind and explore more of what Wisconsin had to offer. Cheese-making, perhaps. Two, he sure as hell wouldn't be watching Die Hard this Christmas.
Okay, I lied a little bit. It wasn't just narrated by Taurenelle, who is great and really, really nailed that Wisconsin accent and the comedic, slightly horrific nature of Bucky Johansen. When I first wrote this and decided almost immediately to have a tree that sounded like Alan Rickman, I had absolutely no intention of narrating it. It wasn't something that was on my radar. I can't do a Wisconsin accent to save my life. But then the comedy episode started to develop and someone suggested putting this in, so I went with that idea, and I'm grateful that I did. It's always hard in these competitions when you put a story out there and you think it's good and people tell you nice things, whether they're your friends or strangers on the forum or whoever, and you think, yeah, this is going well. But then, of course, it's judged by 10 people who've no idea who's written it, and you've no idea what they're judging it against. Sometimes you find out, sometimes you don't. And it all comes down to subjectivity. So of the 10 judges' decisions that had this story versus another one, it picked up 4 points. So in 4 of those decisions, the judges chose my story, and in the other 6, they did not. Is that true? Have I got that right? Yes. I was just checking it wasn't even worse. It is 4. So, disappointing at the time. But I can't argue, It's all subjective. People pick stories as their winners for whatever reason they like. And there were some very, very funny stories in the workplace comedy genre. And comedy, what's the expression? Tragedy unites, comedy divides. At least that's what I tell myself. But hey, look, I enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed it too. If you didn't, if it's not your sort of comedy, I'm most terribly sorry. I'm not really sorry. Okay, moving on to our last story today. And I was delighted when I tracked down Ashleigh Adams, who's a very busy individual to see if we could feature her story from the comedy genre last year in the Wonder Battle. It's called A Notice from the Bridgewater Homeowners Association, and her prompts were comedy, gardener, spoon. Now, being English, I don't really know much about HOAs, these homeowner associations. I don't know much about them apart from the horror stories I see popping up online occasionally. But I do hope that what Ashleigh's got for us here is an exaggeration, and that some of you poor individuals in America don't have to deal with situations like this. Now, this is a very, very funny story. It features the voices of Ashleigh herself and of Melanie York and Regan Westergard as well. I won't say any more. You'll see why there are 3 voices in this. And here we go. This is A Notice from the Bridgewater Homeowners Association by Ashleigh Adams, read by Ashleigh Adams, Melanie York and Regan Westergard.
Dear resident of 837 Orchard Lane, I hope this letter finds you well. I am informing you that your front garden is currently in violation of Bridgewater Homeowners Association Code 137.824, unapproved landscaping. I trust that you will remedy this situation quickly. Failure to do so will result in a fine of no less than $700. We appreciate your prompt attention to this matter, and thank you for keeping our neighborhood a warm and welcoming place. Best regards, Deborah Robinson, HOA President.
Deborah, for the last time, I will not be relocating my garden, and I sure as hell won't be paying you $700. I've spent the better part of a decade breeding those vegetables, and the location has never been an issue. I'm going to assume it's pure coincidence you're bringing this up at the beginning of tomato season, since you know my heirlooms consistently win first place at the Reynoldsburg Tomato Festival. Surely even you, Deborah, aren't that petty. Sincerely, Lydia, 6-time Tomato Festival Blue Ribbon winner.
Dear resident, while I understand your reluctance, it is in my purview to make these determinations. That garden is an overgrown eyesore, and it is affecting property values. I insist that you address this issue immediately, or I will be required to take further legal action. As the newly elected HOA president, I am attempting to rectify a long list of violations my predecessor willfully overlooked. My intention is to restore this community to its former glory, and I resent the implication that this has anything to do with the Tomato Festival. As you know, my beefsteaks are famous in their own right. Regards, Deborah Robinson, HOA President.
Deborah, if by famous you mean known for being flavorless and mealy, then sure. Frankly, I have no idea what sort of mobster tactics you used to convince the entire neighborhood that electing you HOA president was a good idea. I tried to warn everyone that giving you access to this kind of power would be the equivalent of handing Darth Vader the keys to a fully functioning Death Star. Looks like I was right. I also heard you called the cops on Jimmy Baker for riding a skateboard. He's 9, Deborah. Maybe try therapy instead of this misguided reign of terror. I'll be requesting an appeal from the HOA Board of Directors next meeting. Maybe they can talk some sense into you. Lydia. P.S. Stop calling me resident, for God's sakes. We've known each other for 20 years.
Dear resident, skateboarding is a subculture rooted in debauchery and illicit drug use. It has no place in an upstanding community. I explained this in detail to the tribal tattooed hooligans masquerading as law enforcement when they arrived on the scene. I have since filed a complaint with Sheriff Boyd about the officers in question. He assured me that he will be looking into it. It is not surprising that you'd be unsympathetic to a potential rise in crime, since we both know you have no qualms about committing blatant theft. Deborah Robinson, HOA President.
Deborah, please tell me this isn't about that hideous spoon again. I did not steal that stupid hunk of metal. And by the way, just because your son turned out to be a burnout stoner doesn't mean you need to demonize the entire pastime of skateboarding. Maybe you should reevaluate your parenting skills. Hell, if you were my mother, I'd be high as a kite all the time, too. If you're still missing your beloved antique spoon, may I suggest checking your own ass? Something seems to be permanently lodged up there.
Lydia, I will have you know that spoon once belonged to Benjamin Franklin. It is a family heirloom worth thousands of dollars that just happened to go missing after a dinner party where you drank an entire carafe of Pinot Grigio before embarking on an unasked-for rendition of Defying Gravity. For the record, you are no Idina Menzel. Not that someone as classless as yourself would understand much about heirlooms, unless they contain seeds. Deborah Robinson, HOA President.
Deborah, although you've clearly lost your mind, I'll take the compliment on my heirlooms. They are, as you know, glorious. I'll see you at the appeal.
Minutes from the Bridgewater Homeowners Association meeting. In attendance, President Deborah Robinson, Vice President Jamal Fields, Secretary Bronwyn Willis, Treasurer Cynthia Purdy, Resident Lydia Carmichael. Deborah, President, opened by insisting everyone try her beefsteak tomatoes and refused to continue until she was assured they were not, quote, mealy. Meeting commences. Lydia, resident, accused Deborah of harboring a personal vendetta. She stated she would not pay the assessed fine or honor the violation. Deborah threatened legal action against Lydia and called a vote. The motion did not pass. Vote 3 nays to 1 yea. The board agreed to allow Lydia to keep her garden as is with no fine. Matter resolved. Lydia proceeded to present a petition signed by 107 Bridgewater residents to relieve Deborah of her position as HOA president. In the complaint, Deborah was referenced as unstable, vindictive, and the Joseph Stalin of suburban Ohio. See attached to reference complaint in full. Deborah became visibly enraged and threw a half-eaten tomato at Lydia. The two women then engaged in a physical altercation, where Lydia managed to remove a handful of Deborah's hair extensions. Further escalation was prevented when Jamal, Vice President, and Cynthia, Treasurer, intervened, though Jamal caught a rogue elbow and ended up with a bloody nose. In the wake of this unfortunate turn of events, the board voted in agreement to remove Deborah as president. Vote 3 yeas to 1 nay. Jamal Fields will serve as interim president until a more permanent solution can be found. Matter resolved. Signed, Bronwyn Willis, Secretary.
www.craigslist.org/for-sale/Greater Columbus. For sale. Fancy silver spoon. $150 or best offer. Nicked this from my mom a while back. Should be worth something. She never shuts up about it. Trying to score some cash for weed. Serious inquiries only. Okay, I lied again. That was me at the end there, doing my best silly stoner voice. I know that Ashleigh wanted a male voice there at the end, so I thought I'll give it a go. I hope that's okay. I hope she can forgive me. The number of times when listening to the other narrators in this recording, when doing the editing and things, the number of times I have had to pause because I've been just giggling like a child. And it's very, very funny. I think Ashleigh did a superb job here, and if you weren't aware, if you weren't involved in Writing Battle last year, or if it just passed you by, it shouldn't come as a surprise to learn that Ashleigh won the entire comedy genre with that. It absolutely stomped its way through. Very funny, very layered, with the back and forth between Lydia and Deborah, and the little barbed comments, the repeated tomato issues that just popped up throughout, even in the crazy altercation at the end. The references to the silver spoon and the stoner son and the skateboarder, and then the little knife in the comedic heart at the end there, with the Craigslist opportunity that the son's trying to get some cash. It's just very, very funny. I don't want to analyze too heavily there. I think it was Dylan Moran who said analyzing comedy is like vivisecting a fairy, and I don't really want any fairy vivisection on this podcast, thanks. But I mean, suffice to say, you could study that story as a way to unpick comedy, should you wish. So there we go. 3 very funny stories. I've had a great time putting this episode together. I am, as ever, grateful to our writers and our wonderful narrators. Thank you for joining me on One More Short Story with me, Chris Fulwell. We'll see you next time.